1 million Iraqis have fled their homes. As ISIS continues armed siege, more than 1 million Iraqis have been forced from their homes by conflict this year, the UN Refugee Agency said Friday, a number only likely to rise as Islamist militants and Iraqi security forces battle for control. A humanitarian crisis is brewing, as families who fled fighting with little more than the clothes on their backs seek water, food and shelter from the summer heat. Concern for the soaring number of people displaced in Iraq comes as the UNHCR marks World Refugee Day on Friday. Its report, based on data up to the end of 2013, finds that the number of refugees, asylum seekers and internally displaced people worldwide has, for the first time since World War II, exceeded 50 million people. Now the crisis in Iraq, which was already sheltering hundreds of thousands displaced by the war in Syria, is swelling that number even further. An estimated 500,000 people fled Iraq's second city, Mosul, last week after it fell to fighters from the Islamic State in Syria and Iraq. Already, 500,000 were displaced from Iraq's western Anbar province, where the Sunni militants have been dominant since early this year. Added to that are tens of thousands more, who have fled their homes in Diyala and Salaheddin governorates amid the recent violence. UNHCR spokeswoman Arian Ramuri told, "Will the numbers soar still higher? In terms of the number of displaced people, that really depends on what happens," Ramuri said. "But what we know is that conflict and violence fuel displacement. With a humanitarian situation, we know that there's 1 million people displaced and it's not always easy to get to all of them. While some fleeing families have taken rooms in overcrowded hotels, others, low on funds, have had to take shelter in transit camps that have sprung up near checkpoints controlling entry to Iraq's Kurdish-controlled. Those who have fled to the Kurdish region are easier to reach," Ramuri said, "but others have sought safety in less accessible regions." UN High Commissioner for Refugees Antonio Guterres, speaking in Beirut, warned that any massive flow of refugees out of Iraq could be hard to cope with. Looking at the region, one asks ourselves, how can refugees from Iraq be received in the context of all the other situations that exist around Iraq? So, I hope that this outflow will never come, because the capacity of the region to deal with it is practically non-existent.